Hello, friends of the internet, and welcome to 5 Reasons to Dump Your Toxic CMS. This is the first in our MarTech webinar series, and happy to have you folks with us today. Can't wait to get into this content, some really great stuff. A lot of the times we focus on developer content or some other higher level content. This is aimed specifically at marketers and the people who are working with CMS platforms every day. And so, let's dig right into some of the ways that you can leave your slow, low-ranking websites in the past. Let's get to it. So here's the thing. Lots of you are still using traditional CMS platforms, and that's okay, but it does bring with it a lot of problems. And let's just look at a few of those things and think about how we might want to work through those, okay? So first of all, oftentimes traditional CMSs bring slow websites. The more content, the more problems you get with that kind of slow, it's laggy, it's sluggish, page speed times get lower, our lighthouse scores get worse, and anyone feeling triggered yet because our blood pressure goes up? It's just not great. And we really want to get away from anything that's slow on the internet. And I think that, if anything, pages are being ranked lower on search engines more if they're slower. So we want to get rid of that. It's old. Like, no one likes being on an old version of a thing. And I think at this point, traditional CMS is kind of considered old, but we might not even be on the newest version of our old traditional CMS because it's so hard to upgrade. We just keep using it. And that's probably why you're here now, because we want to not have old things. Traditional CMSs tend to create unreliable websites, very hackable, and they'll crash under load. So, we send out that amazing email that brings in, we got 500,000 customers that we've just blasted out this email marketing campaign to, and they all click on the I'm interested link or whatever it is that we're trying to drive a call to action, and the site goes down, which is not what we want, right? We don't want that to happen. It should never happen. You shouldn't really accept that. So we don't want that. So Headless CMS came along and solved some of these problems. It really was trying to attack that issue of, the website and the content are coupled together too closely, and that's not a good thing. So we decouple that, and we can do all kinds of good things and solve all kinds of problems. And it was really for developers that they said, awesome, this is great. I love building websites with Headless CMS. Why? Well, because we can build sites that are faster. So as developers, we can use modern techniques to handle the load and all kinds of stuff to make the pages render statically. And so our page speed scores and the lighthouse scores are, they're hitting in the high 90s to 100, and that's great. We want more of that. Fast is good. So you send out the email campaigns, and the page loads and everything stays fast through it the whole time, and that's what we want. We can build better user experiences. So really fresh UIs with all these cool new front-end frameworks. It's really hard to pick a new framework with a traditional CMS. You almost can't do that, right? So with Headless CMS, we can pick whatever framework we want. We can build the great UIs and have a better user experience. Way more reliable websites because we can render content statically. It's far more secure, way less hackable. One of the terms that you might hear thrown around is there's fewer attack vectors on your website. Well, that sounds really fancy, and it is, and it's really good. So we're going to have, all new technology to run our internet and web properties. So this is just a way to make things better. So developers, yay, love this so much. But how do the marketers feel? How do you people who are probably listening to this is our MarTech series, you're the folks who work on this stuff every single day. How do you feel about Headless CMS? Well, in my experience, marketers, meh. Okay, my site's faster. That's nice. Oh, it's more reliable. It doesn't get hacked as much. Cool. But wait, why do I have to wait for a build again? Why do I have to wait for, I click publish on my content and there's this lag. I have to wait for something. Is there a reason for that? Well, I don't like that. And where's my preview? I used to have preview. I used to be able to just type in the thing and then I would see it on the website. And I just want to see what it will look like. Why can't I have that? Oh, wait. And my SEO, used to have all these SEO plugins and stuff that I would use. And I know they were slow and stuff, but I felt I had control. So as a marketer with Headless CMS, sometimes your needs got left behind. And I would say, don't put up with that. That's not something that, I think you should be sort of just dealing with. Just deal with it. It's fine. Your website's better. Developers will say all kinds of things. And I love developers because I am one. But as a marketer, you need to feel empowered. And really that's what this sort of whole talk is about, is like how do we make sure that while we're using a headless CMS to solve all these problems from our traditional CMS, as a marketer, how can we make sure that we're empowered? We have great page speed scores, and we can do all the things for SEO to drive our site to the top of the search results. So, overall, how do you feel about CMS? Well, it's, just overall, my website was slow. I'm not feeling so great about that. I feel locked in. I can't upgrade to a new version, and that's making me even less happy. And maybe I just got hacked. So this is often where people start a conversation with folks like me who, full disclosure, I'm president at Agility CMS. Hi, I'm Joel Vardy. Forgot to introduce myself. Maybe you're feeling like this right now and like, oh, I need a new CMS. I'm thinking about headless CMS, but I'm not sure. So now you're kind of introduced, and here's where we're all at. Okay. So, well, where do we go from here? Well, we listened to all of you out there, all kinds of people over many, many years, just like the old show. Anybody watch Frasier? One of my favorite shows. Actually, if I'm going to watch TV falling asleep, I'll watch Frasier because it's just, I love the voice, and it's just so inane. Anyway, we listened, and I'm listening. And there's a better way to do all this stuff. There's a way to approach the problem with a feeling of empowerment. And that's what we want to get to. So the first thing that and I get this from my colleague, James Vidler, who did a great talk, and so you can find it. It's on our website called Give Love to Your Exes. And with the X meaning experiences, and experiences matter, right? And what I want to say to you is your experience matters too. So let's make sure that your voice is part of the conversation. So what experiences do we want to give love to, though, right? Give love to your ex. So obviously we talk about UX, user experience, all the time. And for this conversation, user experience is the people coming to your web digital property, to your website, the people visiting your website, they're your users. We want to make sure they have a great experience. So yeah, the website shouldn't crash, it needs to be fast. It needs to, do all the things and be responsive, and needs to work on their phone, or needs to work on their desktop or their tablet or wherever they were, their TV, wherever they were on. All these things need to work for them. And we spend a lot of time working on user experience, and that's great. And I would say one aspect of user experience is search engine results. So SEO is kind of part of user experience too, because first of all, if they can't find your site, they can't get to it, right? No one's going to be there. So user experience is kind of a lot packed into that. But then there's developer experience, right? And I would say that under traditional CMSs, this was like really low, okay? While there's a lot of people that consider themselves WordPress developers, I still wouldn't say that that's a great developer experience, because you can't create great user experiences easily. Hard to make the website fast, hard to make it reliable. It's hackable because of the way the platform works. So from a developer point of view, we just feel better working on headless CMSs. We like APIs and SDKs and all these great things and acronyms that other people don't necessarily care about. Developers get really excited about it. So that's fine. That's great. We've got two. But the other experience that's important is the editor experience. And, I would say editors and marketers, I kind of would say either one, they kind of mean the same thing from my point of view. Editor experience really matters. And there's a way to make the editor experience good with headless CMS. Kind of an awkward way of saying that, but and the most important thing is you as an editor need to care and need to know that you're cared about and that you're important. Your experience is important. The way that we get to that is step 2, content first. So first of all, understand your experience matters. That's first things first. The second thing is we want to take a content first approach. And if you read the agilitycms.com website, there's all kinds of content on content first. And the thinking there is that your content is valuable. The content in your organization, especially at the time that you're thinking about switching CMSs, is super valuable. And it will outlive your new design. So if you're coming to the idea of a new CMS thinking, okay, I need a new CMS, let's go get a new design for my website. If you just implement that design, you're not really thinking about the content that's in it and how valuable that can be beyond that design. So while it's great to have a great design, and I'm all about, design is what sells, it's what brings people back, it looks great, it's super important. but the content that drives that design is something that you need to consider and think about and outline. So, because that content also can live on a big screen, a middle screen, and a little teeny tiny screen of all different teeny tiny sizes of the different phones that are out there these days. So while your design was probably going to be sent to you, you see a screenshot and it's like, oh my gosh, that website's amazing. Well, how will the content work on all the different screens? And what if that content needs to be driven to a smart TV as part of an app or as part of someone else's app where you want to syndicate that content? There's all kinds of ways that your content can be valuable. So we need to consider that. So you need to become an architect, which is a weird thing to consider, right? I'm a marketer. I'm not an architect. Well, in the great words of George Costanza from Seinfeld, I always wanted to pretend that I was an architect. So we can kind of, it's like hypnosis. We can pretend that we're architects because we know what our content is. You know the content that's valuable to you and all the different pieces that make up that content. And so for some people, a piece of content might seem like it's a Word document. So it's like it's one document. But in that document, there's pieces that are really valuable, especially when it comes to SEO. So content architecture is much easier than actual architecture because you know all the pieces that are in there, right? We have, just think about something like a press release or an article where you have got our title, our date, our author, our category. Maybe you've got subcategories. Maybe you've got an excerpt. We've got our image. Like if you can think through all the fields and start to dig into that, then you're a content architect in a way. And if you can understand those fields that go into those pieces of content and the lists of content that's going to create in your CMS, now we're thinking architecturally. And we're not going to have the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We're going to have, this great structure that's going to live on. So content architecture, the way I approach this is we need to think strategically, right? So understand content's valuable, but what's our goal with this content, right? If I have a list of articles, right, I want to be able to show that on all the different screens and all the different permutations that could be shown in. So what are the fields that are important to me there, all right? So that's what we call content strategy, and sort of think strategically. We don't want to think too tactically yet. Tactically is like the individual things we're going to do, but strategically, what's the overall goal? What are the teams that we're going to have, and what's the overall structures, that kind of thing. So that structure of your content, as you're starting to break it down, you can just do it on a whiteboard or in any kind of sort of like doodling tool where it'll help you just like create your little boxes of the different pieces of content. Do some drawings, do some thinking. I like bulleted lists for saying, hey, I use a header for this is this kind of content. These are these fields and it's related to this other one. Draw some boxes. It's really important to understand those structures outside of any system so you can have a free form kind of thought process that goes through that. And it doesn't mean you're going to be actually implementing all of those fields, but have some ideas, have some discussions with your team on what is in that content. And it's really important to have those discussions. And sometimes they lead to arguments because some people have things that they think is important and it's not necessarily what you think is important. So bring the teams together, figure out the structures, figure out how that's important and how you want to capture that. And then we start talking about teams. Who is going to be working with this content? And I think this is where the editor experience sometimes falls down because oftentimes the developers are the ones who are considered architects and they are the ones who are deciding what content goes into a thing. Oftentimes a developer will look at a design and thinks, I'm going to need these content pieces to implement this design. But they haven't necessarily thought about you, the marketer, the editor, who's going to be actually working with this content, who's going to be, typing in all the fields and doing it every day and coming up with all these processes that do this. So let's think about those teams and processes and strategies before we implement anything. Get that sort of drawn out, put it on paper, whatever you want to do, Word documents that describe it, Visio diagrams. I'm sure there's all kinds of other tools that you may have to help you sort of outline what's going to be implemented, okay? That's what content architecture is. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate about good content architecture. All right. And then this is just a concept that I want you to become familiar with. We want to iterate on SEO. SEO is a journey. It never changes. It never stops changing. It never stops evolving on what we need to do for SEO. It's not a thing, right? What I think sometimes happens is we don't think about SEO at all. Developers sometimes do this because it looks fine. And I implemented the design. Here it is. It looks great, right? Oh, okay. But did you think about this and this and this? And there's SEO checkers, and oh, look, we just scored horribly on all the SEO things. And look, our Lighthouse scores are terrible. And oh my gosh, we can't launch this site like this. And it's supposed to go live tomorrow, right? Anybody else feeling again triggered by this kind of idea? But if we think about what are the bare minimum levels of SEO, we'll start from there as a baseline, and then we'll work up. And we'll make that as part of our concept of just how we think about it. So it's all very meta. Right? It's all very meta out there, but you will get there to where you need to be. And just think about this is a journey that we're on together, hopefully with the rest of your team, right? So for an SEO strategy, I'm sure you have an idea of what SEO means to you, right? Write that down as a strategy ahead of time. Think about it. And especially when you're coming to join a team, I'm really lucky. And Harmony, she's on the chat right now. Harmony just joined our team, and she brought with her a lot of SEO ideas, right? Way beyond sort of the common structures that you might have that we already had on our site and some of our customers have had on their sites, all kinds of knowledge. And what she did was she worked with us to help implement those. And we're still working on it. There's things you can do all the time to help organic traffic, to help get higher on search results and all kinds of different things. So it starts with a very bare minimum. And for some people, it's like titles and descriptions. Do we have titles and meta tags on every page? Meta descriptions. If you don't, then I would say you're not at the bare minimum, because who knows what something's going to actually look like when it gets indexed and crawled by a search engine. And actually, it could even be, do you have like a robots.txt file and some things like that? Like, are you showing up on search results at all? There's some even foundational things, and I would say that's kind of wrong if you're not showing up at all. But do you have titles and descriptions? That's just a good place to start. Number two, have you thought about Open Graph? Right? Have you thought about Open Graph images? And there's all kinds of tags that fill in like the social cards. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And what's really interesting is when you look at content architecture, especially with something like just think about the example of the article that I just gave. So an article has a title, it has maybe a date, and it has an author and some other things. Well, article is actually, there's a rich text, a rich search result format that Google has that allows you to output that as JSON. So we could be taking the output of our article and putting that in a JSON meta tag that tells Google, hey, we have articles. You can do the same thing for events. And by the way, the events page on the agilitycms.com website has that same thing, right? So, reach out in the chat if you want to hear more about that. But, and we've open sourced our website as well, so you could actually see how we do that. But there's lots of ways to get Open Graph and sort of rich search results working for you based on the content architecture you already came up with. And what was cool is when Harmony joined the team, she said, oh, you've got some things happening here, but some content doesn't have these great Open Graph images. And so let's add that into there. And let's make sure that our social cards look right for all these other different content types that maybe we haven't thought of yet. And oh, wait, let's go to step 3. Let's go next level. And let's look at all of our headings, because if you look at where keywords come from and where that can be really important with SEO, this is something I've learned, is if we can create compelling headings that have our keywords and that really drive us to read the content, that can actually help with SEO. And one of the things that a lot of sites do is they'll take the title of any page or document, and they'll make that the same as the H1 tag, right? So the same thing, because it's the same page, right? Here's the title, and now I'm going to say the title again. But sometimes that's actually, you want that to be different. So now we can go and adjust our content architecture, and our developers would have to be on board with this, and they have to understand what we're doing. Maybe on some pieces of content, we want to add a specific H1 field, okay? We're going to structure our content even more specifically just for SEO. And that H1 field, if it's there, we'll use it and we'll put it in an H1 tag, right? So there's a real relationship between SEO and what we want to gain. We want to gain, we want to be able to put compelling headings into there, and we want to have something different potentially from our title, right? So we want to have more control, but we have to connect with our developers because their experience matters too, to make sure that that actually gets output properly from the website, because Headless CMS allows you to connect that all the way through. All right. I see Harmony's getting some love in the chat there. That's awesome because she's amazing. All right. So that's another thing. If you're not a marketer and you have a marketer on your team, talk to them, listen to what they say. It's really important to understand your team has more knowledge than you think. And I think what tends to happen, and nothing against marketers, but sometimes marketers talk even faster than I do and name off tools and challenges and problems. And if you could just capture all the things that your marketers are trying to tell you, you can gain a lot. What happens is we tend to shut them out because, you know what, I can't hear anymore. That's just too many things. So let's break it down into some goals. Let's get titles. Okay, now we're going to work on Open Graph. Okay, let's work on headings. And you might have all kinds of different content in your site that you want to capture this for, but build your SEO strategy and implement it. And if you want to hear more about that, reach out to us. At the end of this presentation, there's some connection, some help with connection, and then maybe we can throw some links in the chat to help connect with our team further. And I just want to tell you right now, with Agility CMS, SEO is a first-class citizen right in the CMS. What we noticed is that most of the people coming to Agility were saying, well, I kind of like Headless CMS, but I heard that it's really bad for SEO. And I'm not sure why, and can you help us with that? So what we did is we just baked SEO right into the Headless CMS to make it easier right off the bat without doing any content architecture to get all the good SEO stuff into your content. But you can do even more if you have a good strategy. Number 5, and I think this is something I've been talking about the whole way, is be empowered, all right? And actually really should say, and there's another version of this, be empowering, all right? So if you're a digital leader, then you need to be empowering, right? You need to be empowering the people that work with you and that work, in your team. If you're one of the members of that team, you need to be empowered. So you've just learned a whole bunch about strategy, about content architecture and SEO strategy, those kinds of things. You need to take that to your team, to your managers, to the people who are making decisions and say, we can do better. We can do a lot better than what we're doing. And this is how. So, to be empowered is to understand that as a marketer, you have a lot of knowledge and power in your organization. And it brings me back to, this is some Agility specific stuff here about what's actually in a CMS in terms of content and assets and things like that. So most Headless CMSs, this is just kind of an overall idea here. Most Headless CMSs really have two things. They have content. So all of the content that we talked about, the structured content, that's the one thing, it's all there. And then we have assets. We have images that we can use and files and all the different assets that we can attach to that content. And that's it. That's all that's in a CMS in general, okay? And then we use APIs to output that to our websites and our apps and all the other things. So that's really great. And it's super powerful. You can do a lot with that. But it's not necessarily as empowering as it could be, because my website's built of pages. And where are the pages in this? How does this relate to pages, right? A lot of times page structures become hard-coded when we use Headless CMS. And that's not empowering, that's lock-in, and we don't like that. So Agility CMS, we took that idea and said, well, let's give people a sitemap, let's give them pages, and let's bridge the gap between developers and editors, and let's give something called modules. And modules is the idea of a component. So if you're a developer, you understand what a component is, but let's give the content for that component. Let's leave that to our editors. So we'll build components that are reusable, that can be used all over the place. And they're going to take this content in, and that content is going to be driven from the CMS. And now we're going to let editors put them on pages and put pages on sitemaps, and it's going to be great. Let's take a look at what that actually means. All right. So if I hard-coded my page structure, it would be fine because I'd be able to build it really quick. But it would look like it's going to look like until a developer went and changed it, right? And that's not a good thing. That's not what we want at all. And here's another thing that came up in a conversation yesterday. If I've hard-coded my sitemap, and oftentimes the way this is done is with like a file system structure as part of a web project, then if I have multiple languages, I'm even more up the creek because I can't change those pages for different languages very easily. Okay, so this means that my marketers can come along and move the sitemap around and do all kinds of things with it and get it translated into multiple languages without developers having to do anything. So everybody wins. Developers can build it once, and the marketers can change it a million times. As the kind of rhythm that a marketing team needs and requires to do their job, let's empower them with that. All right, so we can move pages around on a sitemap. Yay. We also need to be able to assemble these pages. So this is just a visual representation of what that kind of means with Agility's page management. And so we'll have something called a page template. So this is like outlining, on any given site, it might have like an interior page, a home page. Maybe I've got a landing page template that doesn't have any navigation, 3 or 4 different kinds of things. You could have more. But each one of those, we can define zones. So maybe it's like columns that content's going to go in. If we have like in here, we've got like a main section and a right section where it's like a little smaller. We can consider those zones. And now as editors, we can drop modules into those, which are going to render as components as with the content that's in there. So the content that I type in is going to get templated into these beautiful components that have all kinds of great design and UX baked into them. So it brings together all the different things. It means we've got a great user experience that we're able to create. So as an editor, I can create this great user experience because a developer coded these components to have that experience, but I gave it the content. So I just think this is just a really great way for it to be a win-win-win situation in terms of giving love to your X's, but also empowering yourself to have more capability over what you're going to do. And this is just, once you get to this point with your website and you can start generating and iterating an SEO strategy on top of this, now you're so capable, you can just do so much more with your time and sort of with your website to drive your business. And we've seen this with so many folks, especially if you're thinking just from a marketing point of lead generation. All right. Outbound is so expensive, but this is inbound, and you can generate so much more traffic and so many more inbound leads and conversions just by driving your site higher on places like Google and Bing, mostly Google. So this is how we do that. This is our strategy to get to that point where we're driving inbound leads to generate either more, conversions with leads, or it could be actually more revenue on an e-commerce site. So that's how our empowerment can actually drive what the business is trying to achieve. So with Agility CMS, you've got rhythm, you've got that speed that you need, both on the ability to have a faster website, but also being faster to change and evolve with the SEO strategies that come along. Open Graph wasn't a thing, 12 years ago, that's not even that new, but the versions of what we can do with social cards and social sort of sharing and how we can try to rank better with keywords and headers, all of that has been evolving. We need to have the speed to evolve with that and the rhythm to generate our content and update with the speed of your business. So Agility CMS can bring you that. But this is just the beginning of the conversation. This is, as again, the first in our series. Follow us at Agility CMS. My Twitter handle is @Joel Vardy. Please reach out, follow us, DM us. All of these events are available on agilitycms.com/events. And you can get in touch with me directly. You can share my email right out there. Just go ahead and email me. And but the other thing is, we also, if you jump on, we got our Instagram as well, as I'm seeing in the chat. You can also reach out to us on any of these channels, and we'd be happy to connect. And I have to thank all of you. This has just been great, a great opportunity to speak and to help people be empowered about content and to talk about CMS. I could do it all day. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. Take care.